So that is Daniel Jones in the post-game presser having to answer questions. You don't get a lot out of Daniel Jones. It's basically he has to do better. He's gotta pick it up. He's frustrated. He's got to minimize mistakes. It's what you're going to get from a quarterback after a game. Just very tough game to watch. Very tough weekend of football for both Jets and Giant fans. We're going to get into it all. There's a lot to break down. We're just talking. We might not even we might be past the point of being angry, almost to being defeated right now. So we'll get into this. So we are the Three Angry Giant fans. This is your host, Scott, Giant Mike, Cardone, and Jets fan Novak. And before we get into the dreary stuff, let's give a shout out. So this one's at the very top of New York State. So hello, Messina, New York. Population 1,435. It's right on the Canadian border, and it's named after General Andre Messina, who was one of Napoleon's generals. So it's known for butter and cheese production, and it was parts of Me, Myself, and Irene were filmed there.
Mike Messina? That's only Messina that I remember.
It's actually spelled Massena, so it's a different spelling on Messina. It's not Messina, it's Messina.
I was with Loggins and Messina. A little bit of obscure music reference there, but
it's probably Massena for all I know.
I was gonna go. It sounds like someone Cardone and I might have gone to high school with. Messina.
Yeah, right.
Messina, right. Sounds like a Lincroft name.
It does.
Yeah, Jerry Messina, my guy.
Yeah, definitely some Italian dude.
So, guys, to put this, how futile this season's been so far, we know how much the Giants have been outscored in the first half. We know all the Jets hoopla with Aaron Rodgers being sidelined after the fourth play of the season. But my friend Collins sent this to me, and I know Novak pointed this out too. But there are two teams in the NFL that haven't played an offensive snap with the lead this year. Now, both the Giants and the Jets have a victory, but those are the two teams that have not played an offensive snap with the lead this year. That's how futile things have been for our two franchises.
And we're going into week 5. Like, how pathetic is that?
What a joke.
Yeah. I don't know. We had a chance to not be on that list. I believe this week, if I'm remembering the order of events correctly, but our coach does not kick field goals like the rest of the coaches in the NFL with the MVP of our team, who is basically our kicker, and with an offensive line that just can't do anything. So we had our chance to be up 3-0.
And Mike, on that play, by the way, so we don't go for the field goal. We decide we're going to do the proverbial tush push play. And on that play, both Schmitz and Bellinger get injured. So not only do we get stuffed on the play, we lose two guys. Bellinger has a sprained MCL. He might be out a few weeks. Schmitz has hurt shoulder. And I think he hurt his ankle on the very first play of the game because he got up limping and was hobbling back to the huddle as it was.
Yeah.
And that really set the dominoes in effect for the rest of the game, where we saw 11 sacks because you had Schmitz out at center. So they moved Brittis into center. They put Lemieux in, and then it was a jailbreak. We already know Thomas was out. Guys, I know people are down on Daniel Jones, and a lot of people are blaming Daniel Jones. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But that offensive line is so non-functional. You can't have an offense that's going to do anything, no matter who the quarterback is back there, when there's jailbreaks on every play.
I don't know how it's possible, for as long as I've been watching football, that no team that I can ever recall has fielded an offensive line this bad. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. We'll talk a little bit about people blaming Daniel Jones later, but when you watch these clips, any random clip from this game, you don't have to cherry pick. They're not even there. I mean, they're getting spun around at the line of scrimmage, and it's not tricks and stunts and delay blitzes. It's power just coming at you. And there's guys coming unblocked, and the guys that are getting blocked aren't aren't really slowed down as much as the ones who aren't blocked. It is a complete mess from, 5 guys who somehow made the NFL. I don't know where to, as I've mentioned before, and I'm probably going off on a bit of a tangent here, Scott. I apologize, but we've got so much capital in this offensive line. How is it this bad? You've seen teams like try to throw some draft picks at an offensive line and they don't live up to the hype, but this offensive line is historically bad. It seems impossible. It seems impossible for that to happen. Now, granted, listen, the two biggest pieces of capital we have on the offensive line are the tackles. One of them is starting to brush on bust territory, but Thomas wasn't looking that great at this point in his career either. But Thomas and Schmitz are not playing in the majority of that game. But listen, Thomas played week 1. And Dallas has got a great defense, but that didn't look like a competitive offensive line either. Something is amiss here. I have no idea. I meant to do this today, got busy with some other things, but who the Giants offensive line coach is, has he been there? How long has he been there? Is he a holdover guy? Maybe Scott has some information on that, but I don't know where else to go right now.
Yeah. It feels like we're getting on, but guys, we've been talking about this. We need to murder the offensive line for the next hour. At least we'll do it here, because guess what? When you listen to these jackoffs break down the games, where the Giants are this season, they're not murdering this offensive line enough. Of course, they're pointing a finger at Jones, of course, and Dable. That's all you hear. Of course, who's to blame. Don't have to know anything about football to watch that game, and really so far the first 4 games of the season, just to look and see. And I can almost ask Novak, just as a football fan, diehard Jet fan, this Giant offensive line, have you seen? Just be completely, just objective. And have you seen a worse offensive line in this in our entire lives of watching this league?
And it honestly isn't just, it's every play.
Yeah,
every play.
It was embarrassing that every play someone is in the backfield and they're just like waving them by, go right by. And I've never seen anything like it. I'm not trying to throw shade. It was embarrassing.
I want your honest opinion and assessment, because I know you're not doing it just to appease us on this show. I mean, I'm asking for your real opinion, and as a knowledgeable football fan, like what you're seeing just as a neutral fan of this particular team, like what in the world, guys, it really doesn't make any sense, because this Giant team, there's something so dysfunctional and something that now is deeply rooted wrong with the operation, the function, the scheming, the coaching, the game planning. There's something so wrong. And just on the offensive line, I'll get to the receivers and how fucking bad they are, and because I'm going to defend Daniel Jones as much as possible. I mean, because of all the things you're hearing or not hearing about the lack of support around this quarterback in this offense is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. How this offensive line at every single position from left tackle all the way through is getting beat 1-on-1. Like I said, they're guys are coming in untouched. It's insane. It's go ahead, Scott.
Here's what's glaring to me, because I went back and I did not want to watch any of that game again. I went back and watched the plays, and many of them were the sacks, but there were 3 times that Jones gets sacked where literally every person on the offensive line is beat and staring at the man that they just beat him, getting ready to tackle the quarterback. 3 times. How many times do you see 4 people get through a line? And I said 4 people. So that's also what Seattle was doing. Seattle was rushing 4 sometimes and getting to the quarterback easily, which means everyone else is back in coverage and no one's open. So here's a stat for you. Daniel Jones dropped back 42 times. He didn't throw the ball 42 times. He dropped back 42 times and was pressured 36 of them. It's historically bad. Historically bad. And so when the people say, I saw a number of threads on the Giants page flat out saying Daniel Jones lost this game for the Giants. He's garbage. How could a guy lose this game for the Giants who is being sacked 10 times. There were 11 sacks. One of them was on Paris Campbell, who took who was going to pass the ball. So there was 11 sacks. 10 of them were on Daniel Jones, but he's pressured every time he drops back. How do you want a quarterback to function? Troy Aikman talked about a game where he was sacked 11 times against the Philadelphia Eagles. I remember that game. I think the Cowboys scored 3 points in that game as well.
I remember we sacked the Philadelphia Eagles one night on a primetime game at home. I think OC had like 6 of them. So, yeah. But and here's the other thing, guys. Going into this game, we thought we had a chance to do something offensively because this Seattle defense coming into this week was the 3rd worst in the league statistically in average yards against per game. Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers went up to Seattle and hung well over 300 passing yards on that same defense. Because I was having a conversation with someone this week about I was just barking at how the Giants are by far the worst team in the league. Well, the Panthers, and you can't go by record. Don't go by record. You know, like, well, the Panthers. I said, they just went up to Seattle, and Andy Dalton was throwing the ball all over the joint. So and kudos to the Seattle, to Pete Carroll and that defensive coordinator and that Seattle game plan. Because guess what? They came into Monday night coming across the country with a defensive game plan. And let's not forget also, the Giants had 10 fucking days off after on a Thursday night game. And that's what they put out there to have 10. So here you got Seattle coming across the country. The Giants have been sitting at home for 10 days. And that's what they come out with. They decide not to grab a 3-point lead. Mike, you already alluded to this, but they decide with the shit that we've been dealing with the first 3 weeks, they decide let's pass up on a Graham Gano field goal with a guy automatic, and let's get a 3-0 lead at home where let's get the crowd going. Maybe, just maybe, that's a spark to play with a goddamn lead for the first time in 4 weeks where there's some kind of spark on the sideline. There's something to get this team going. We pass up on the field goal. We don't know how to do the push. We suck at everything. So right then and there, the walls just caved in the rest of the night. But I got to give credit to the Seattle Seahawks defense. They didn't do shit offensively. Seattle did nothing offensively. Nothing. And that's a game that it's amazing. A road game, Monday night game, Seattle didn't have to do a thing offensively, and they're winning by 3 touchdowns. So what does that tell you about what occurred on the other side of the ball? I got to give all the credit to Seattle's defense too.
And here's the thing, Cardone.
Yeah, they didn't take a play off where even when they were sending forward, they were bringing the house. They didn't sit back and said, "Oh, we're going to play a soft zone," or they were playing. I've never seen an NFL game where you're getting that much pressure and then playing man to man on the back end, where man to man in the NFL.
Yep.
Well, and I was just going to say that contrast that to the end of the half where Drew Lock is in the game. Wink decides not to bring pressure on him, so he's dropped back into coverage. And yet, even rushing 4 and dropping back into coverage, somehow Noah Fant is so wide open. There's not anyone within 20 yards of this guy, and he rumbles for almost a 50-yard touchdown on 3rd and 10.
Gutless.
How does that happen? You're not rushing the passer, so who? No one even looking at this guy that's coming out of the backfield?
It's the same thing on both sides of the ball. The how does this happen thing. It's, most teams, like to Cardone's point, when you're sending 4, right, you shouldn't be able to get that much pressure. The quarterback should have time. Conversely, in the back end, there should be some pretty good coverage back there, right? No, with the Giants, everything goes against them. So when the other team blitzes, right, there should be people running around open. They're not open. When the other team doesn't blitz, it doesn't matter because they don't have to blitz to get pressure on Jones. It's the same on defense, like you're just talking about, Scott. It's okay. We're not going to send pressure. We're going to sit back on this play. Well, why is there a tight end wide open? Why are we playing back at the sticks if we're not sending pressure? I don't.
Because we don't press cover, Mike. We fucking do nothing on so defensively on our side. When we're on the defensive side of the ball, when whatever percentage, I'm sick and tired of already hearing about the percentage of snaps that Wink and this defense blitzes. Because guess what? It ain't working. Because if we know we're blitzing, then why are our corners? Why aren't we press covering these guys? Why are they 10 yards back to allow for that check down and nobody and the quarterback? We never get into the quarterback's face. The quarterback always finds exactly where he's going. No, there's coverages against, or we miss cover guys all the time on the Noah Fant play. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was thinking, when was the last time like we had a 3rd and 10 in that situation and we just picked up like 12 yards, let alone 50?
Yeah. It's
unreal.
There's no way to analyze this other than just to go. I mean, every time you look at something or think a part of the game, your head wants to pop off. I don't know if you guys have had a chance. If you look at the team stats from this game, the Giants this looks like a competitive game on paper.
I looked at them.
Giants had a bit more time of possession.
We had 36 minutes of possession.
Yeah, the Giants
owned the football.
6 of 16 on 3rd down somehow in that game. I mean, that's not great, but conversely, Seattle, to Cardone's point, was 3 of 12.
Yep.
We had 6 penalties for 45 yards. That's almost nothing in an NFL game these days. Seattle has 8 for 74.
Seattle had 13 first downs. They ran a total of, what was it, 50? They ran 51 plays. We ran 74.
Yeah.
The only problem is, when we're running a play, our yards per play, 3.4.
Yeah.
Fucking Pop Warner.
Yeah,
that's like flag football.
Can I say one thing? Which is, Scott pointed this out, and it was the funniest comment. And I'll say that the Giants do have a history of making stars out of people.
Oh yeah.
Like this Witherspoon guy, who was that Arizona running back, Chase Edmonds, who ran for like 500 yards against you or something? And then that Flipper Anderson. I mean, I feel like, you guys do have a history of making stars out of guys
Flipper
that
Anderson was good. I mean,
games.
like Boston Scott.
I'm just saying,
no, I'm just saying, like, you go to like Boston Scott. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean,
like 18 career touchdowns, 16 against the Giants. Something stupid number. Like
something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And this Witherspoon guy after the game, he's yucking it up going, yeah, we knew Dave Jones is going to take his first read or whatever. And, well, what other time did he have to look for a second read?
Yeah.
It's either the first read or he runs.
Yeah.
So I'll give you another stat, too, and then we'll move off this because it's not really going to do anything other than just get our blood boiling again, though. Jones has been pressured 113 times this season through 4 games. 11 teams last year gave up less than 150 pressures all season long.
We talked about this after week 1. Every goddamn stat is epic, right? It can't just be bad. It's got to be nothing since 1947 or 8 teams last year didn't give up as many pressures as Giants have in 4 games. I mean, it can't just be bad. It just has to be just pile on epic bad.
I went off on a guy earlier this week because he said something. He said, Daniel Jones only does his first read. And I said, well, then what happens when he's pressured, as much as he is? Well, he's responsible for the pressures because he holds onto the ball too long. Well, how can he hold on to the ball too long if he's looking at his first read and that's it?
Yeah.
It's like it's either or. You can't blame him for everything that's going on here.
No, it's uneducated. It really is. It's lazy. Listen, I said this to a guy I work with this week. Blaming Daniel Jones for what's been happening this year and specifically for what just happened is like blaming the people of Pompeii for the volcano. He's a victim. He's a victim of this. He is not in any way responsible for it. He did not play a very good game. For him, we're used to seeing Daniel Jones and people who would pay a little bit more attention. We're used to seeing somewhere near this type of pressure, not quite like this, but we're used to seeing Jones make some plays behind it, make some good plays in the face of it. He really didn't do anything.
But the backbreaker was the pick 6, and that's what stands out to everyone. It's a primetime game. A lot of uneducated people are watching this game.
Yep.
They see a pick 6. It's got to be the quarterback's fault, that play was his fault.
Yeah, there's no question. That was a bad throw, especially since it was a bad throw, bad decision, and it seems like he had Waller a little bit more open in the same general direction that he was looking. But if you're Daniel Jones, man, I'm sure your head is going, get rid of this ball. It has to be. But yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Guys, I'm to use a British term, I'm gutted after this game. I mean, I watched this game afterwards. I'm like, we're 1-3. likely 1-5. The schedule does ease up a bit after that, but by 1-5, you're essentially out of it. And you have way too many systemic problems with the offensive line, with the defensive scheme, everything else that's going on. I worry that Dable might lose the locker room at this point. And, there's already people throwing shade on Dable and Shane. And the way the fan base has turned against the Giants this week, to me, that's the most embarrassing thing. I remember we talked earlier in the offseason about the Giants being one of the, or at least the poll was the Giants are the least educated fan base. Well, our fan base is sort of proving it this year because they're acting like a bunch of fucking morons right now.
And that happens. But so this will be my first of apparently many of Daniel Jones' defenses tonight. So Daniel Jones sits in there in that press conference that everybody heard at the beginning of the podcast here. And he says, my fault. I got to do better. Now, the 8% of us who know what the hell's going on out there realize that this is a grown man being an awesome teammate and doing things the right way. Everyone knows who knows anything about football that, Daniel Jones needs to play a little bit better than that, but it should be easier to play better than that. It's not. And then there's the other thing I don't like, and this is my first of who knows how many criticisms of Dable. He showed Daniel Jones up on the sidelines on Sunday or Monday. I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit. I didn't like, there was a couple of different displays of him. Now, I don't mind a coach barking at a quarterback after a play, but it's one thing when it's 1985, 1986, 1987, and you're Phil Simms and you're riding a Super Bowl championship team and you don't make a very good play. It's another thing when you got Daniel Jones out there cleaning up your GM's fucking mess and taking it on the chin on every play, and you're going to bark at him when he's coming off the field. Give me a flip and break on that. And then I think Dable's real pain with Jones is the lack of emotion. I think he was frustrated at Jones on the bench because Dable was getting kind of animated. And I don't know if you guys saw it where Dable just tossed the thing. I think he wanted some fire out of Jones there. I think that's what he wanted, was just because, Daniel's sitting there looking, you can't tell if we're up by 17 or down by 17. And I think that's what it really amounted to, but I didn't care for it. I didn't care for it mostly because of the circumstances, what was going on the field. And I love a coach who will get in a quarterback's face, and I love a quarterback who will give it right back. But I just thought this was not the time or the place. And I thought it was a little bit not what I want to see from Dable in that situation.
I didn't mind it necessarily. I like the fire. Dable's a fiery guy. I do have a couple of issues, though, with the way Dable's handled things in terms of personnel. Daniel Jones was on the field towards the end of that game where he's just taking hit after hit after hit. Yeah. Andrew Thomas was left in the first game way too long, and now he's been out several weeks since then. I think Daniel Jones was in the first game until the very end too. I don't think Geno ever saw the field against the Cowboys. So you have a couple of games now where it's almost like Dable's like, it's the team's fucking mess. You guys are out there. You got to end it. Whereas preserve your players, preserve the health of them.
Yeah. How about getting fired? How about getting in the face of every single offensive lineman?
Yeah.
Get them in a huddle on the sidelines and chew their ass out. Literally point fingers at each one of their unperforming asses, grab the offensive line coach and say, get in the fucking game, man. Like Parcells said, on some of those NFL sound bites back in the day, get in the game, man. I'm not saying that Jones should get off scot-free either. It's an entire unit, but man alive, get in someone's face on the offensive line or the offensive line coach, or something has to happen, whether it's in game. And I was thinking about this, guys, and I don't want to get too much off topic here, but you want to talk about making a statement? Offensive line coach, I don't know who it is. Like you said, Mike, I don't even know who it is. Fire his ass yesterday. Tuesday morning, you wake up, you read the New York Post, and O-line, just leave the position vacant. Who cares? Fire. Why not?
No, it was actually a question that was sent in, so I was trying to hold off on that. But the offensive line coach is Bobby Johnson. He's been there since Dable took over in 2022. And we have not seen the unit improve under him. We've seen it regress in many cases. And Evan Neal spouted off a little bit about the fans today, and that's a bad look too, because as a player, the last thing you want to do, even if you're right, is to pick a fight with the fan base. I think he called the fans sheep and just went off on them booing and stuff like that. Well, to Cardone's point, Evan Neal should be one of the guys at Dable and Bobby Johnson is in this face on the bench going, what the fuck are you doing out there? At least slow your man down. It's like, what's going on?
There's something.
So we know the brutality of the season. I mean, we've been outscored 79-6 in the first half, but there were 2 primetime games this weekend, and the other primetime game was on Sunday night. And it had about as much of a shit show ending and a shit show around the entire game itself, if you're a Jets fan or if you're a fan of neither team, because you had to put up with that spectacle. We'll get into the spectacle, but I want to hear from Novak. I mean, first off, we'll talk about the call. We'll talk about other stuff in that. Your impression of that game as a whole. I mean, you have to be spitting nails mad, and you probably. You guys at least probably played well enough to deserve to have a shot to win. Whereas, Mike, Chris, and I are sitting here, with our head in the sand, knowing that our team just didn't have a chance once the second sack happened.
I mean, you wouldn't think that there's any possible way I could get angry over a game after the Rodgers game. This was times 10. Yeah. For so many reasons that I can't even begin to communicate. We'll get into the fucking Taylor Swift stuff, which I am so over that. Forget the Jets. This is not about the Jets, I promise you. This is about the NFL, which we will get into. But it is an embarrassment what they've done there. But the bigger embarrassment is Cardone, like maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, said something to the effect of, is there a Taylor Swift effect? And you know what? There was. I'm not kidding you. That game was fixed. And you guys know this about me. I typically, now probably because they're not in a lot of close games, I am not an officiating person. Like, I don't blame the officiating a ton. I'm not like Scott, right? Scott's like, the kicking tee is an inch high. That is unfair to the Giants. Like right at the kickoff, like he's complaining about the officiating. Yeah. I am not an officiating complainer. It's just whatever, for whatever reason, I just don't complain. That was, without a doubt, the reason the Jets lost. It had nothing to do with their play. It had nothing to do with the Kansas City Chiefs, who looked completely pedestrian and average the whole game long. They made Mahomes look average at best. And so I am going to get into the last 2 calls. So it was 3rd and 20 from the 50 when Mahomes dropped back. And the hold on Jermaine Johnson was holding his jersey like this. And Jermaine Johnson with one hand is patting the guy on the head to stop holding me and waving his hand at the ref with the other to notice the hold. And Mahomes took off for 22 yards and a first down.
There was a flag on that play.
Yeah, on the Jets.
Yeah.
Then you know the play I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. 3rd and 22 with 4 minutes left. Right? He drops back, and that pass. So even if, and it was not a hold by Sauce Gardner, it was not a hold. Let me just say that. Even if it were, make the call when it fucking happens. The hold was on the 32-yard line. He got it intercepted at the 15 and ran it back 4 yards, and then the flag came out. Yep. It 100%. That game was fixed, and I do not believe in the NFL fixing anything, but you cannot tell me that they did not want the Chiefs to win that game. Zach Wilson played his ass off, and I'm the biggest Zach Wilson detractor that is probably out there, and I have to give the kid credit. I give him credit. I give Nathaniel Hackett credit. They actually had a game plan to his talents. They rolled him out, 3 tight end sets. They were, good checkdowns, all kinds of stuff. They let him run. He got him in space. Like, they had the right players. They had Gibson in there. We're a pre-snap motion. All kinds of stuff were going on, which is perfect for Zach Wilson. And I don't know why it's taken them this long to get that, but they finally did. And on top of the fact, they were in on Mahomes on every play. That defense looked fantastic, with the exception of the first quarter. They deserved to win that game, and I will not let anyone tell me they didn't. It was a disaster of epic proportions that they lost that game. Sorry.
No, Novak, I was angry. Well, I hate officials anyway, so I was angry about that. But I was angry because you heard comments after that play that I can't stand. Like you heard the old comment, well, good teams overcome bad calls. How does a team overcome that call? You don't get the ball back. You don't get the ball back. It ends the game. The other thing I heard is, well, you call the game the same no matter what time it is. That's bullshit, because I'll tell you what, do they call illegal contacts on Hail Marys? What is a 3rd and 22 and a 3rd and 20 play if it's not close to being a Hail Mary? What did they call? They called illegal contact on the 3rd and 20, which, by the way, was a shitty call. And then they called holding on 3rd and 22. Like you said, the optics of it are terrible too, because even if they thought it was a hold, why is the guy waiting 3-4 seconds to make the call? And then when you notice when he goes to throw the flag, he has the flag in his hand. He like double pumps for some reason before tossing it.
He didn't He didn't reach to pick out that flag out of his fat ass until that interception went down. The second that Michael Carter got that interception, that's when he took it out. He double pumped and then threw it. And he said he didn't want to hit the player with the flag. Give me a break. It's a flag. And I know there was this guy back in the 80s who got his eye knocked out from the flag or whatever. But nonetheless, in the middle of the play, you can't worry about the flag hitting a player. Come on. It was out of control. And that whole spectacle was, we can get into that too. What a disaster.
There have been some games over the years that really, it's not just the Giants, it's not just the Jets. There's games that we don't even know about because we weren't paying attention that sure smell like something's wrong. And this one right now is at the top of the list.
100,
and
yes.
It just so happens to be with the face of the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce bringing all this new attention to the game. Guys, it stinks. It stinks. And I'm a huge critic of officiating, but I do not believe in games being fixed normally. But like I said, there have been a handful of games over the years where maybe the fix isn't in. Maybe there's no dark room discussion about, all right, the Chiefs are going to win. Maybe not that. And I don't think that's what Novak's suggesting either. But it's just, we're going to give the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt on plays where they need it. And it maybe not even a conscious decision. It's an effect. It's we all know, Scott and I used to go nuts back in the day on the BBI boards about people saying, well, good teams get calls. That's part of being a good team. And we'd say, no, that's a chicken and the egg argument. If you get calls, you look like a good team. It's not always one way or the other. It's, if you get a couple calls going your way in a game, you can look great. You can look unbelievable. And then people throw out the automatic excuses for you. They had a couple calls go their way, but we don't, if I acknowledge that, then I have to acknowledge this thing that I love isn't real. And I'm basically watching wrestling. So I don't want to do that. It's, I'm with you, Novak. It stinks.
And it really, honestly, if that were 2nd and 22, I don't know that I would have been as angry. It's the 3rd and 22 bailout is what.
Yeah, no, listen.
And you could go back and look at least 10 plays during that game where there's the same amount of contact, if not more, and they're not throwing a flag. And why aren't they throwing a flag? Because the inconsistency is what leads to the conclusion of bias in many people. And Mike and I, when we used to have those battles, we used to hear another thing that would be said a lot of times too. It'd be, well, officials don't impact games. The fuck they don't. When you extend a drive, any drive you extend on 3rd down,
of course they do.
You're impacting the game, because it would have been a turnover on downs. It would have been a punt. It would have been the ball going to the other team.
And we've talked about it here many times. It's just as disastrous when it's not about the calls that are the questionable ones that are made. It's also about the ones when you stuff the flag in your pocket on the obvious calls that aren't called also that can change the outcome of a game. That's just as devastating if you're on the short end of that as well. But guys, this is a trend. Maybe, to throw the fixes in kind of thing. I was never one of those guys either, like the fixes in. I was never one of those guys either, like the predetermined outcome of a game. But now I don't put anything past the NFL at this point. With what we're witnessing in today's NFL, And the four of us talk about it all the time. We talk about it even off, when we're just when we're watching games together and offline, if you will, about how we've talked the overlap with Hollywood, the overlap with the narrative between what you see, what's going on with social media, between what you see, what's going on with the reactions in the in the studios and the sports centers and all this thing. There's something going on in this league now, and it's a force that the average fan, the guys like us, we're just being swept away by this wave of bullshit that's happening in NFL, and it's heading and it's bad. It's trending in a really bad direction, guys, and we're just caught up in it right now.
I want to say 2 comments in that game. We'll get into this Taylor Swift thing. 2 things that drove me absolutely crazy. Mike Tirico, right after halftime, made the comment, Taylor's in the building and a game broke out.
Oh, my God.
That was the comment from the lead commentator, and a game broke out. Then, fourth quarter, it's 2020. They go to Melissa Stark, who, by the way, I'm dancing on my pet peeve later, but she says, guys, I got to talk to you about the impact of Taylor Swift. It's 20-20 in the fourth quarter, and that's the sideline reporter report. Are you kidding me? Yeah. That we're talking about Taylor Swift in the fourth quarter of a 2020 game when the worst team in the league, as of last week, is beating the reigning NFL champions or tied?
Yeah,
come on.
That's the news. I'm trying to gather my thoughts on this because there's so much to talk about right here, but it goes back to the 2 other points. I think Scott brought these both up early, and I always get these wrong. I'm sure it was someone else, but one of them was the AWS commercial about the schedule being the best it's ever been, right? And everyone who pays any attention to scheduling and not just what's going on with the Giants here, but what's going on with every team with these crazy amount of primetime games and all that, everyone knows this is the worst flipping schedule anyone's ever seen. For almost every team's in agreement on that. I've heard fans of other teams say it. They hate this schedule. That is textbook gaslighting. That commercial wouldn't be out there if the NFL thought the schedule was really good. That commercial's out there to tell you how great the shitty schedule is.
Yep.
And the other thing we heard this year, I'm gonna attribute this one to Novak, but this one might have been someone else too, is when they go back and say everyone agrees the NFL officiating is better than it's ever been. Nobody agrees with that. Nobody.
Who's everyone?
Yeah, no, it's a blanket statement. And again, it is textbook gaslighting. Nobody makes that statement if they know it isn't straight a lie, a falsehood. You know who else acts this way? Politicians act this way.
Mm-hmm.
And if the NFL starts acting like politicians, we all know damn well there's something to hide, right? I mean, that's why politicians act this way. It is what's happening in the NFL is off the chain. And I'll tell you what, guys, this year is going to be a shit show for the Giants. And Jets still have hope. This is going to be a shit show for the Giants. This is the perfect year for us to almost change the podcast into an anti-NFL, anti-officiating,
it's getting there.
Podcast, because you can't just listen to us now and say, oh, these are Giant fans with they're just bitter. Officiating had nothing to do with the Giants losing that game. We've already covered that. And whatever they said during the game, nobody cares because we were all screaming at the TV. So announcers and officiating and whatever else is going on with the NFL, other than the schedule, which is really, really screwing us right now. But it has nothing to do with the Giants. So this is a perfect time for us to get on our soapbox and have people tell people, listen, this isn't affecting the Giants, but something's wrong with the league.
Well, and it goes beyond that. Cardone brought up the social media stuff. The NFL, after that game, on their Twitter page or Facebook page, I don't even know what, said the NFL is now 2-0 as Swifties.
Yeah.
What is every fan of the NFL a Swiftie now?
No.
And are they 2-0 because the Chiefs won 2 games, or I don't, did they have that in the can ready to go? And that's why the Chiefs needed to win. Would it have not looked as good to say the NFL is 1-1 as Swifties? Yeah. It's not a conspiracy, but to me, the whole blowing out of proportion that the Taylor Swift thing is just getting out of hand. Mike Tirico did say, there's celebrities in the house tonight. Every primetime game, there's celebrities in the house. They're in those boxes. They're in those suites.
Yep.
Every game.
Especially in New York.
Always. L.A.,
You know-
New York, we know this. It's been going on forever. That's not what we're suggesting. Like they'll show that the 3-second camera shot of somebody at a Laker game. That's been going on since the 80s, back when Jack Nicholson was, had floor seats, right? It was probably the first one that comes to mind as far as a celebrity. But where this is at now, and we talked about it here as far as we saw the overlapping of Hollywood. I've been talking about it for a number of years now, where keep Hollywood and entertainment on the fucking E channel, and keep sports on the networks that are supposed to, where I'm watching an NFL game or any other game for that matter, any other league. It's out of control. Guys, we're past the point of jumping the shark with this shit. That's where that's where the league is at. And they've risked, and we've talked about it, where I understand, and think about it in any shit. We could talk about it with Bud Light or any of these other national brands. When you're trying to bring in a new demographic, it shouldn't come at the expense of your lifelong, diehard, steadfast, true fans like us, because those are the kinds of fans. We're the ones that live and die with this stuff and we'll watch it until we don't have any breath anymore. These the fans that they're right, guys? I mean, maybe we're such dinosaurs now that we make up such a small percent of the population. I don't know, man. I guess because I'm not a social media guy, so maybe I don't get it. Maybe I'm just not with it in terms of today's millennial, sports spectating bullshit or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, the NFL does things right now and they get away with it. So take a look at that Sunday game that was early, the one in London. How many people actually could watch that game? It was televised on ESPN Plus, and it was televised on Disney Plus.
Yep.
And the Disney Plus game was the Toy Story game that was animated. It was not a game. It was a reenactment of what was going on in real time with animation on an electric football board. And so the NFL did two things there. First off, they bastardized the game for the kids. And then the second thing is the majority of the fan base of the NFL did not watch that football game. They took a game of their schedule and just said, we don't give a fuck if you watch it or not.
Yeah. And by the way, who else is watching that game other than the most diehard of NFL fans? If it was on, I'd have got up at 9:00 in the morning and watched it.
Why not?
Nobody, the fringe fans aren't doing that.
No.
And maybe that's not for that game. I'll tell you that. I mean, that is, see, the pop culture fans and the ones who they're appealing to right now, it's short-sighted because there's no way they hold on for a long time. And they'll be gone, and then whatever happens after that will happen, right? But if we go, and when I say we, I mean people like us, people who go to ESPN and not just look at the score, but look at the stat line, and people who would not even think of missing a game of their team. If we go, they're dead, and they don't realize that. I mean, you hear a lot of people say the NFL's a daddy and it's a new church. And, that implies that they can get away with anything they want. Not if people aren't coming. And not if people aren't watching. That goes away really fast. Look what happened in NASCAR, when they thought they were on top of the world. It's a dying sport. Look what happened to the NBA.
Do you think that they had that animation game and that, who the commentator was for that? So, 7-year-old boys are probably the only ones watching that game, right?
Was Booger McFarland?
Booger McFarland, right?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't have Jake Butt as the sideline guy, right? Like, of course they did. I mean, they are catering and pandering to 7-year-old boys who don't give a shit about the Jaguars or the Falcons. They're not watching that game from start to finish. No one cares what the commentators are saying. What is the use of it? That's what I think. I don't necessarily have a problem with Taylor Swift as a person. She's great. All the respect to her as successful as she is. Don't care. But the fact that the NFL buys into her and makes this actually part of the game is infuriating. I texted you guys before the game. How long is it going to take for them to mention her? The whole pregame show is about her.
Yeah.
We've always said it's not Taylor Swift's fault.
No,
Right,
I
I'm
don't
not
care.
like
Yeah.
again. I don't
She
know.
should be able
I
to go to
barely
any
know anything
game she
about her.
wants.
Yeah, like again. I don't care if she's at the
No.
game, not at the game. Like, what do I care?
Oh,
It's like she's not to blame. If it's the production, it's the NFL, it's the league, it's everyone that is writing about her and telling a story. That's who we're blaming. That's what we're talking about here. It's not Taylor Swift.
Did any of you guys catch any of that Toy Story game?
I saw
Zero.
the
No.
highlight thing when they did a segment on it, but I did not watch it. No.
I put it on because I was like, oh, I'll flip it over. Maybe I'll watch some of the game. I literally could only last about 2 minutes because I quickly realized I'm not going to see the game. I'm seeing animation.
Little toys running around.
They just wasted a shitload of money on some technology where in real time they mimicked exactly what was going on with the game.
Can you imagine what that cost to put on? Oh my God.
So,
And amidst all this, I'll just keep on the roll about why I hate the NFL. And we can, this might be backstepping a little bit. I'll say this and then get out of the way, but I just got to get it in. So, who mentioned, what's the guy's name? Orlovsky, right? And I saw the segment that Scott was talking about where he was just using film to tear into Daniel Jones. And he was playing about 3 seconds of the film and going, Jones has people open here. Come on, fuck off. I can't believe this guy has played NFL or played quarterback in the NFL. But this, for reference, this guy who wants to bury Daniel Jones behind that offensive line is the same guy who thinks that our friend Justin Fields is the MVP. That's his. Those are his two. Those are his two nuggets that he hangs on to. That guy shouldn't be. That's if he's a doctor, that's malpractice. He's not. He is not good at what he does. I'll get out of the way. I had to get that in. That probably could have been a pet peeve, but.
No, that infuriated me. I mean, he tried. What other quarterback, by the way, gets sacked 11 times in a game, and you have people in the studio going, well, if you roll the tape, 7 of these sacks are Daniel Jones's fault. I mean, really, what motivates someone to do that in the first place? What I used to see is just people would be raving about the Seattle defense, or they would be talking about the ineptitude of the Giants offensive line. They wouldn't break this down into such minutia that they're actually throwing shade on the quarterback for it.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Cardone.
No, it's very simple. I thought about this and I came down to just simply 2 simple reasons. One, it's the contract. It's Daniel Jones's salary, because that's the first comment that you hear.
Yep.
And the Giants are morons. They made a huge mistake in this investment in Daniel Jones. So so that's where everybody first goes to when you want to knock on Jones, because I've heard it for the last couple of days where what a ridiculous investment we've made. Daniel Jones isn't worth $40, let alone $40 million. So they immediately, without giving any, like, it's real clever to just throw that narrative out there. Again, there's no real insight, because, and I know they're not watching every single play like we are. They're not. They have to report on every single game. So I understand that. It's 2 things, guys. It's the contract and the salary, which is so easy to go to. And then secondly, and this is more of a social media kind of thing, like slamming on Daniel Jones, the same reason why that asshole Rodney Harrison slammed on Zach Wilson. These guys, they're safe targets, guys. It's a safe target to bash on Daniel Jones because no one's really going to come to his defense. Jones isn't going to backlash him on social media. Daniel Jones might be the most polite guy anywhere, let alone the NFL. So it's the same thing as, like, I don't want to compare him to Eli and all that stuff, but it's the same. It's when it's a safe target. Daniel Jones is just a safe target. There's no consequences. You're not going to hear any backlash by just bussing this guy and trashing him on. Did you hear that asshole? What about the guy, who's the lineman from San Francisco? Scott, do you want to bring that one up? The comment that he made? All right. I mean, just, again, just completely, this is, again, you're just taking a guy being professionalism and just throwing it, just completely just trashing Daniel Jones because it's safe. He's a safe target. You're not going to, no one's going to come under fire for bagging on him.
So the guy from San Francisco, the guy from San Francisco basically said, why did Danny throw the ball so quickly against us and let Seattle have all the fun this week?
Weren't we deserving? Yeah, of all the sacks and the turnovers. What an asshole. And
That's just an asshole comment. But, Cardone, kind of the underpinning of what you just talked about, and you are spot on, by the way, brilliant, again, is that there's an unwritten rule in the NFL, at least there has to be, where you don't talk about a player's money. And it's definitely very prevalent between the players themselves, but it also in the past has extended out to announcers and broadcasters. And there's been a few exceptions. I know when Eli got his contract, everyone liked to call him the $100 million man until 2 years into his contract when he was like the most underpaid 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback you could possibly imagine. And that's a short-sighted stuff. That's a whole nother story. But like you said, safe target. These guys feel free after games. Other players coming out talking about his contract. What happened to the play? Let the player get his. Let the player take care of his family. You don't criticize any player for the contract. That was a big deal not that long ago. And you get a safe target like Daniel Jones, you can do it. And I know, I wonder what would happen if that kind of talk happened. When Aaron Rodgers gets when signs with the Jets, if he had been playing, would other players be saying to him, "Oh, the Jets gave him this big contract. He's supposed to be the savior, and we just rolled him"? No, that wouldn't be there wouldn't be stories like that from other players. There just wouldn't. Daniel Jones is a soft target.
Well, Cardone brought up the comments by Rodney Harrison, which was very unprofessional, I thought, in the post game, and I thought who he was talking to handled it very
Chris
well.
Jones. He did.
Yeah, it was Chris Jones. He basically deflected it. But even if you look at the situation, the way Daniel Jones, the way the script has been flipped in one game. So after Jones has this game, people are like acting like Daniel Jones is complete garbage. What are the Giants doing with Jones? Whereas Zach Wilson, who has been just ridiculed for the last 2 years, he looks halfway decent on prime time. And now everyone is like, did Zach Wilson turn a corner? Has he figured it out? What happens if he sucks next week? Are they going to go back to bashing him? I mean,
yes.
Why are we
yes,
so
they will.
like Cardone's term, prisoner of the moment?
Yep.
It happens every fucking week in this league.
Week to week.
Yep. We saw it with our buddy Justin this week. He's turned the corner.
Yeah. And then even Justin Fields, in a game where he played probably the best he has in his career, he gives up a touchdown to the other team from a turnover of his own doing. And then at the end of the game, when he has a chance to possibly win or tie the game, he throws a critical interception. And no one's blaming him for that.
No, nope. I mean, people are saying Daniel Jones is the reason that the Giants lost this game. Well, no, everyone who's watching knows. I've never seen an offensive line be so responsible for points. I've never seen it. It was crazy. But Justin Fields literally lost the game for his team. Like single-handedly, they were playing well enough to win, and he gave it away twice in the fourth quarter. But, yeah, I'm done. I'm not going to say anything the rest of the time.
So, Giants go to Miami this week. Do we even break this game down? Anything to talk about? I don't see the Giants having a chance in this game. I see the Giants going on a slide well past the Bills game the way they're going now, and I'm just hoping that they don't become so fractured that the season's over with.
I'll talk about it. Miami 41, Giants 10. That's all I have to say. That's how much I'm going to talk about the Miami Dolphins.
41, huh?
I don't know where I'm getting. Yeah, I know. I think just because they're going to run out of time. I don't know where the Giants are getting 10.
Yeah, what's
to be
10?
honest?
What's up with the 10?
I don't know where they're getting. By the way, would anybody even be willing to bet even $5 that this is the week that maybe we get our first takeaway? We haven't even talked about that. We're in fucking October and we don't have a turnover.
Yeah. There's so many.
I mean, we don't have a takeaway. Week 5, we haven't taken the ball away once.
It's tough to have a takeaway when you only have 2 sacks all year too.
For the love of God. I mean,
there's so many things wrong with this team and everything that's going on that blaming Jones at all, just the more and more you break this team down, the more comical it becomes to think that Jones is the problem.
You know what's great too, Mike? I think we were texting this even. I think I'll give you credit on this one, Mike. I think it was you, like just over text during the game. it's all another thing about the Giants, and no one who's not a Giant fan would even like recognize this kind of stuff. It's all the little things too. It's when our punt returner is diving for a punt and has a hang time of 5.6, and he's diving for it like there's a 35-mile-an-hour gust of wind. Somehow we didn't lose that ball. And then later in the game, or two other punts, we have one where then we don't catch the ball. It lands on the 22-yard line, and it miraculously is covered at the down to the 1. We have something similar the other way where the Giants are covering a punt, and the ball rockets into the end zone. Every little thing imaginable with this New York Giants script, nothing goes our way. It's incredible.
Well, that's another unit too. The special teams unit has been abysmal this year in coverage. Now, I will say Gillen's played well, and Gano is our MVP. But on the flip side of that, the coverage units have been abysmal. The return units have made mistakes. It's been we fielded a ball that bounced on a kickoff. He picks it up at the 1. Why not let it go into the end zone? You pick it up at the 1, and then you got to run it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he actually, I mean, we didn't get the worst thing that could have happened on that play. We didn't get, but it's just a boneheaded play.
But didn't we have a penalty? Didn't we have a penalty of blocking the back? We ended up.
Oh, maybe we did. Yeah, because I remember one. We had a decent return that we had to start back at the 10. That was probably it. Yep.
So, Mike, your prediction?
What Cardone, is that an official one? Cardone, you go with 42 to.
I have 41-10. It doesn't even seem like it's going to be that close, but I have 41-10.
All right. You have to go with something similar. I mean, Miami is way better defense than Seattle does, and you don't have to have a good defense to just dominate this offense. You don't. If you can put 11 guys out there, you can dominate this offense. And Miami, my God. I mean, if the Giants can't get off the field against Miami, they might try to break the 70 record. I mean, I'm not even joking. This is a real score I'm going to give you for this game. 56-7.
Wow.
I mean, that sounds like the old Bears,
no.
right? 108 little
Bears.
I know. Mike, I just couldn't bring myself to predict a 50 play, even though I know they hung 70. We all know. I just couldn't bring myself to predict a 50+ point game in an NFL game.
Yep.
Well done, man. Yeah, I'll be rooting for that.
I'm going out there.
Novak.
I mean, I got to try to be nicer to you guys. I mean, I'll go 35-17.
17.
Oh, the Dolphins, in case you needed clarification there. The Dolphins.
I almost said who?
Funny.
Who do you got?
I'm writing these down, and I didn't even write down the winner. I'm just writing the score. Like everyone knows.
So I
write it down to cross it off. Yeah.
I picked the Giants last week, and then they did me wrong. The other thing too is that Barkley may be back for this game, but Thomas is likely still out. Bellinger's likely out. Schmitz may be out. So if you don't have Schmitz and Thomas again, how the fuck is the offense going to operate? I think Graham Gano is our offense in this game. We lose 34-6.
34-6. And okay.
Meanwhile, the Jets have a little rosier outlook. They're playing the Broncos. The Broncos do have a win at least against the Bears team where they came back, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. A little bit of momentum. Still, that Broncos team is a bad team. So thoughts on this game?
Don't forget, this is the Sean Payton game, right? Because he called Hackett the worst coaching job in the history of the NFL, yet he let up 70 points 2 weeks ago. I don't know that he's done such a great job with the fucking Broncos. I think I have yet to pick the Jets, and I am terrified to do it, but they have to win this game because after that they got the Eagles. That's a loss, and they go into the bye, and then we get you guys. I'm going to say the Jets are going to win this game. I'm going to say 28-17.
It's very close to what I had. I don't think the Jets are going to score that many points. I'm leery about picking them in Mile High, but the Broncos have not been the Mile High team we knew from from previous years where they seem to have that home field advantage. But I'm taking the Jets as well. I'm going 21-17 Jets.
This is a weird game to kind of predict. I was thinking about it a little bit earlier, and Denver. Not that it matters that much. I don't look at point spreads too much. It doesn't. Denver's actually giving 1.5. Yeah, it's one of those where do they feel a little bit of confidence now coming off of their win, albeit against Chicago, but it's still an NFL team. They beat an NFL team last week. So, Denver riding a 1-game winning streak. Without getting into all the, how the game's going to go down, I actually have Denver winning this game in a close one. Novak, I think the Jets lose another close game, I think by like a field goal. I have I'll go 24-20 Denver.
Very possible.
I have for a lot of the reasons Cardone just talked about, and a little bit of a coming back to earth for Zach Wilson. Denver's defense is so bad. But I've got 17-16 Broncos.
I do think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think this is going to be similar to that Patriots game from a couple of weeks ago, even though I do think Russell Wilson and the Broncos are much more competent in offense than Mac Jones and the Patriots.
Yeah.
So for the record, Mike, Scott, and Novak are all 6-2 right now. Cardone is 5-3 in the Jets and Giants picks.
Gross.
Not a bad record to be 6-2 with the shit show that we've seen out of our teams.
Well, I mean,
we just pick losses. I mean, is it really that hard?
Yeah. Once we figured out to stop picking our own teams, man, everyone's been on a little winning streak here.
Exactly.
and I just went with the Dolphins in my suicide pick this week. So
yeah, I will.
I hate going against the Giants. I hate going against the Giants.
I will likely do the same.
That's
So pet peeves this week. I'll start with Novak.
Yeah, so my pet peeve is something I talked about a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned it, but not as a pet peeve, and then I did talk a little bit about it today, and that is the role of the sideline reporter and what it has become. And I'm going to give you 2 examples that I heard this week, and it's annoying the crap out of me. But so college and pro. College. So usually in college, these sideline reporters are like people at the beginning of their career. They're like 22, 23, and they feel the need to get their knowledge out in the 10 seconds they get with the coach as they're running off of the field, who run away from them like running away from a rabid dog. Like they're running away. Don't stop me.
Yes.
Then the sideline reporter grabs them, right? And he or she, usually she, candidly, is looking at it and she's going, your quarterback is 22 for 23 for 275 yards. He's got 2 touchdowns. He's got 3 receptions or 3, completions to a guy who's undrafted, walk-on from Kenosha, Wisconsin, who majors in anthropology. How is he playing today? And meanwhile, the coach is looking at her going, shut up and ask me the question already. So the coach is like, he's playing great. We'll see how he does in the second half. And he runs off. Back to you, Joe, or whatever. Then the NFL, I heard this in the Bills-Dolphins game, and this is not what she said, but it was along these lines, right? They go to Tracy Wolfson, I think it was. Jim's like, Tracy, report from the sideline after halftime. Jim, I spoke to, what's his name? Sean McDermott coming out of the halftime, and he told me that if he feels that if the Bills score more points than the Dolphins, that they have a very good chance of winning this game. But if the Dolphins come out in the second half and turn it around and they score more points than the Bills, that he thinks that they're going to win. Back to you, Jim. Thank you, Tracy, for that incredible journalism. I mean, it's not what she said, but it was like so mindless. These coaches aren't going to give these people anything. The sideline reporters are good for 2 things. One, update on injuries, which when Rodgers was injured, they wouldn't talk. They're good for injury reports, and they're good for like there's a dust up on the sideline or something. Like they're good for that. Other than that, shut up. Don't ask the coaches anything.
I saw one in the Georgia Auburn game where they stopped Kirby Smart coming in, and he's like, the reporter says, "What do you think about the terrible start that your team's having?" He looked there, he's like, "I don't think it's terrible. We're starting a little slow here, but we'll get it going."
Yeah. Is there any? sideline reporter has got to be the most useless job in the world. Let's face it, it's there for eye candy. Novak alluded to it. I'll say it. It's there so they can put a hot chick on TV. That's what the sideline reporter is there for. And it just, you guys just nailed it. Just inane questions, talking to coaches who don't want to be talked to, and they're not gonna ever say anything. Did I see, was it an NFL or a college game this week where actually like midway through the second quarter they were talking to the coaches on the sideline?
It was the Giants game. They were talking to Pete Carroll it was right after a big play. They went to him.
That's getting, I hated the halftime thing. This is in the middle of the game. This is getting, another case of the NFL, because the NFL has to be telling the coaches, you have got to do this or there's a giant fine, because there's no other way they would flip and agree to it. There's no other way.
So you're saying the sideline reporters have flipped from a guy wearing isotoner gloves to eye candy in the last 20 years?
They're eye candy. They're there for injuries and weather, because for some reason you have to be on the sideline to talk about injuries and weather.
Do we really even need the eye candy? It's fine, but no. I'm watching anyway. You got me. I'm watching the game. I really don't even need it.
Yeah.
It's like when Jim Belushi in About Last Night, I'm going back to an 85 romantic rom-com. We're like, recreational fucking space. When you're walking around like with chicks walking around in like shorts and I don't need to see this at the ball field. Save that for like the strip club and the bar and the nightclubs, like recreational space. I'm at a sporting event. I don't need to see this. Keep worlds colliding. Kramer and Costanza. That's worlds colliding. Give me football. When I want to see eye candy, I'll do that at a different time.
Yeah, they had one good one, in my opinion, who did a great job, and she seemed very knowledgeable about sports. And apparently younger and hotter came along and they booted Pam Oliver out of there. She was pretty good.
I think Melissa Stark is decent, but then she had to do this stupid Taylor Swift thing.
Cardone, pet peeves?
Yeah, I was there's so many, right, guys? We were talking about it. All you have to do is watch a couple hours on Sunday afternoon, but mine is usually I'm around the social media, but this one I'm going to pick coach contradicting themselves in post-game press conferences. And I'm picking on our boy Ron Riverboat Rivera this week, who said, I was watching the end of that game, and again, this was before the Giants, season ended, so I was still thinking, I wasn't quite sure. I'm like, well, we're never going to catch the Eagles, because they're just a dominant team over us. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I want Washington to lose, because I'm thinking playoff positioning still at that point. So it had nothing to do with what my pet peeve is here. But you guys know how I feel about coaches going for two. I absolutely despise it until you absolutely have to have it. So we all know that this game came down to a game-tying touchdown with no time on the clock. So Howell leads his team down the field and slowly but surely gets themselves into the red zone. They had two shots from inside the first and goal from the 10-yard line. 5 seconds left. They had to throw an incomplete pass. They have basically almost an untimed down. They get the touchdown. This is the one time I'm sitting there like, you know what? Riverboat, go for two. Go for two. You're on the road. That's a devastating touchdown to give up for the defense. So the Eagles, that's devastating right there. Go for the kill right there. Nope. Riverboat decides to go for the one time where I'm like the only asshole, like go for two, go for the win. Nope. He goes for one. And the pet peeve is when he was asked about why he didn't go for two, he was explaining to the media, well, we were gassed at that point. We were gassed. You were gassed. What the fuck are you talking about? Isn't it always the other way around when isn't the defense who's usually gassed at that point? Like, you just scored with no time left. You have your hands around the team's throat to end the game on a 2-point conversion, and you're gassed? Okay, Mr. Rivera, if you're so gassed when you won the coin flip moments later, why the fuck didn't you kick off? Why'd you accept the ball? You trotted your offense right back out there, didn't you?
They were gassed.
So if you're fucking gassed, then hey, you know what, guys, you're gassed. I'm going to send my defense out there, get a 3 and out. We're going to get some rest. Then we're going to go down and win the game. Nope, you fucking we'll take the ball. We'll take it. Yeah. Why, Ron? Your offense is gas, dude. That's what you just told me a minute ago. So what? How come that would be my follow-up question with my microphone? Well, wait a minute, Ron. Then why'd you take the ball 2 minutes later? Aren't they gassed? Asshole. So of course you're not going to win the game. 3 plays, 5 yards later, punt. Eagles come down, kick the game-winning field goal, game over. Asshole.
I can't really put my finger on anything Rivera's ever done in his career to earn the Riverboat Ron moniker, yet it gets trotted out all the time. He's never really done anything that outrageous.
No, it's lazy.
He's
so,
probably...
and also going for 2. So one play from the 2-yard line for a 2-point conversion. Like what do you do? This isn't a fucking 100-yard dash where you got to run the length of the field. It's a play from the 2-yard line. Are you out of your mind? That's your excuse? Like, these coaches trot these comments out there, not realizing what an asshole you sound like. That's your reasoning? And the media just says, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's good, Ron. That's actually okay. Yeah, now I understand. Now I understand why you didn't go for 2. When you go for 2 though in the second quarter, and I have to the analytics told me to go for 2, so you're going for 2 all over up the yin yang. But when the game's on the line, on the road, a team that just gave up a devastating touchdown, ooh, let's get the extra point. We're tired.
Maybe I can't call him Riverboat anymore. Right? I mean,
you would think
that should have disqualified him. Riverboat Rod would have gone for that.
I said as soon as they decided to kick the extra, I said the game's over. They lost. As soon as he trotted out the extra point. So the game's over. They didn't even flip the coin yet. I'm like, game's over. Eagles got it.
I don't. In general, I don't mind a lot of coaches just going ahead and tying the game up there. But you are Riverboat Ron, baby. You can't. I mean, there's no.
Well, really, again, Mike, my pet peeve was really I was somewhat okay. It's what pissed me off is his reasoning for not going for it. That's what really drove me crazy. Yeah. We were gassed. What are you talking about? When a team is trotting down the field, isn't it always the defense that is the one who's gassed when they're on their heels, backpedaling on like a turtle on its back, and the offense is coming trotting, matriculating down the field?
Yeah.
Especially when you score with no time left. That's devastating. The Eagles
look
devastated.
The best part about that, though, is that they did win the coin toss and then chose to receive, even though they.
Gassed offense back out there.
We're gassed. So that they didn't ask. No one in the guy who asked the question, why he didn't follow it up with that. Like, well, then why'd you take the ball?
Mike, pet peeve.
Yeah, I always hate following Cardone on these. That's really tough. That makes it really tough. I got a little bit of a pet peeve potpourri tonight because there's so many things that happen like this week. I don't even know where to start. I got so much going on, and it will all be irrelevant by next week. So I'm gonna try to just hit the high points of it. So I went to the game in Carolina here on Sunday, which is why I missed a lot of the shit show. I had to get all caught up with what was going on around the NFL this week. But so of course I got. The first thing right off the bat, same thing, guys. We always have a pet peeve when we go to these games is the jersey selection. So I saw some Buttes out there now. I saw a lot. There was way more Favres than I expected to see. Favre 4s in the Viking, So there's a Panthers 4. And Vikings. Yep. I will say though, I think this is the first Panther game because I always look for them because I'll remember one of the first Panther games I ever went to, the stadium was just adrift with what was that kicker they had?
John Casey
jersey.
Yeah. Number 4.
So they must have a ton of these people. There must be in closets around here, just a ton of these number 4 Panther jerseys. So I always look for one. I've always seen one 100%. I did not see a John Casey this time. So we might be at the official end of the John Casey era. Kind of a more Mike type pet peeve. If you're sitting in the middle of the aisle, dude, you cannot buy beers single. You can't. If you're a big drinker and you're not near the end, you got to get your buddies. You got to get 2, 3. You can't. I had a guy. Oh my God, just drinking beer single and pounding them and getting up every time. Oh, sorry. Just like what? Come on, man. You got. I was like, let me go with you. I'll buy 2. You buy 2. You'll have 4. That should get us a quarter. Let's just oh my God, that guy want to kill him. So then the other one, this is sort of an individual one. This is the last of mine at the stadium. So there was a Viking fan behind me, and I could tell he was in this general direction behind me, right? Because he's like overdoing it, like boo, like we talked about last week when the Panthers are out there, and I'm looking back and I can't quite see where the guy is, and I'm looking for purple, and he's like, everyone sucks, fire the coaches, and I can't see this guy's. So eventually, about the third quarter, I realized this is a Panther. He's got a Panther jersey on. He's one of these. We want to get a top 2 pick guys, right? So, yeah, why are you at the game? By the way, you just had the number 1 pick in the draft. How many of these do you need to collect? Like, what's going on? But another one from my potpourri bag here is, we talked about it. We brushed over it. It needs to be talked about a little more. The Giants' fucking attempt at the tush push.
Oh.
I mean, we did not to give that thing enough justice. I mean, so here's why it's a pet peeve. Thanks to the goddamn Giants, I can't criticize the Eagles for running the tush push anymore. I can't. I basically was calling it cheating. How are you able to push a quarterback? It's not fair. It's stupid. You can't do it. The Giants try it freaking once, get stopped, and lose 2 contributing offensive players while doing it.
That's
so
how pathetic
I gotta
we are.
that's how fucking pathetic we are. I gotta give credit to the Eagles and say, you guys do that all you want. All you want. I'm surprised Jones didn't get hurt on that play.
The Eagles are really good too, because when they could do the tush push and have 5 guys move before the ball snapped. And
well, that helps with the tush push when you're allowed to false start.
It's legal play.
Admittedly,
it's legal.
Yeah.
So
No,
go ahead, keep doing it.
I got a problem with the damn name. Why do we have to call it a tush push? That's in the NFL.
I can't believe I used it too. I used that damn name. I'm gross. I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I'm no better than Travis Kelce now with my vaccine commercials and my.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, God. So, and then my last one, you guys had a preview of this because I went off on a little bit of a rant while I was texting. Was the who was it who did the Monday night game who talked about Jones? Having, as soon as Jones fumbled, like the ball barely hit the ground, and the announcer's like,
Joe Buck.
Yeah, Joe Buck. He's like, it's the problem with this guy is these fumbles. I mean, he's got to secure the ball better. That's his 24th fumble of his career, and that's it. So it's a fact. He has fumbled 24 times in his career. He fumbled 17 times in his first 2 years. So since then, in 2.5 years, this dude has fumbled 7 times behind the worst offensive line in football. If you go through and look at any quarterback stats for the year, they fumble 3, 4, 5 times a year, some even more. I mean, you get that blindside hit, like that hit where he fumbled on. You're not holding on to that ball. Nobody is. There's it's just no way. It's immediate pressure. You're running to the right. The guy's coming from the other side. And so it's stat picking, and it always drives me crazy. I hate stat picking, and it is intentionally using a stat out of context. I know Joe Buck is not looking at books and coming up with those stats. He's got someone in his ear immediately going, that's Jones' 24th fumble in his career, and Buck is just farting it out there on TV. But that's intentionally meant. That's a stat they had on cue, just waiting for Jones to fumble so that they could use it. And I saw it again later in the post game. I think it was RG3 talking about, how terrible Jones is now. And now after that game, he has more career turnovers than touchdown passes. Well, you know who else does? A lot of people do. That is not Daniel Jones out there on an island doing that. And by the way, for Robert Griffin, right after games are over, to know that stat, that's the same thing. How many weeks have you been sitting on that, waiting for Jones to have 3 turnovers so the numbers would tip to your favor so you could use that stat? That's very pet peeve-ish, and it's bullshit. And thus concludes my pet peeve potpourri.
Right on.
Well done.
Potpourri.
They're all good.
Love it.
I felt like that, Mike, because I was pissed off by 9:30 in the morning on Sunday. The London game had just started. I couldn't find it anywhere. It's on Disney Plus as a cartoon. I had so many pet peeves, and the Giants weren't even playing until the next day. So I should have known right then this was going to be just one of those weekends that it was just was just going to piss the hell out of me all around.
Yeah.
So one thing I did notice when I watched the Sunday games, and this was even before the Jets took the field, and I'm going to go on the officiating again, but the officiating in this league is at an all-time low. We are now at the point where it is just commonplace to miss illegal or false starts. So false starts are happening in every game, multiple times a game, and going uncalled. And I don't know, is this supposed to condition us as fans to go, hey, well, it's all right, it's all right. He started a little bit early. That's okay. That's fine. There was a mashup of 12 different snaps from the Eagles game against the Redskins. The Eagles' 2 tackles are taking a step back, and they're doing it like in a demonstrative motion, so it's very visible. They're doing it a half a snap or a half a tick before the snap. They're doing it multiple times a game. Why is this not called? Or is Sirianni saying, you know what? I don't mind if it's called once or twice. We're going to keep doing it.
They're not going to call it every time. No.
They showed one of the push tushes where literally not only does the center like do the old squeeze the ball a little bit before snapping it, 5 guys fire out before the ball's ever snapped. That's a 4th and 1 play. It becomes 4th and 6. You probably have to punt then. I don't get why this is becoming allowed. And I'm picking on the Eagles here, but it's not just the Eagles. We saw it with the Chiefs opening night.
Yeah.
We've seen it with Dallas over and over again. We see it around the league. It's just becoming more and more acceptable. We saw it with the Giants where the 49er kicker took a half step before the ball. And if it's so evident, like that's the thing, your eye is looking at these guys standing still, and one guy that moves, you see it right away. So how is an official not seeing that? It's probably the easiest call to make in all of sports.
I think it's 2 reasons. They're protecting the quarterbacks, and the offensive line play NFL wide is abysmal. And they're trying to give every opportunity to protect the quarterbacks and not have a sack on every single play. It didn't help you guys, but nonetheless, I honestly think that's what it is, Scott. I think that this is another way to protect the quarterback, because you, without mentioning names, said Dak Prescott, Pat Mahomes, and I forget the third one.
Jalen Hurts.
Coincidentally, those 3, you noticed it, and you didn't put 2 and 2 together, but those are the 3 quarterbacks you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I know when Andrew Thomas left a beat early, they caught that right away in the game against Cardinals.
Yep.
Yep.
So, and I will say this, what has to happen, and this is not the pet peeve part, but this is just sort of me thinking out loud. What has to happen to actually turn the tide of this officiating nonsense where people just don't take it anymore? And worse yet, does the NFL even care? Do they even want to fix it? Or are they perfectly fine with the way it is, with the third down bailouts, with the artificial scoring, with allowing offenses to do whatever they want, but if a defender gets in the way of a receiver, it's an automatic flag. They have a very easy fix to this, and I've said it before. The very easy fix is to call something that is blatant and impacts the play, and basically let everything else go. The game flow would be so much better. You would reward teams and players for actually getting in the right position. I don't understand why as a fan base and as a coaching base and as a player base, people aren't going absolutely ape shit when a 3rd and 20 and a 3rd and 22 is called a defensive penalty that's ticky-tack and automatic first down. Guys, like I said before, you're not seeing it called out a Hail Mary. What is a 3rd and 20 and a 3rd and 22 if it's not a faux Hail Mary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scott, that's really good. You said something right at the beginning. Conditioning the fan to understand a new rule. And I compare it to, it doesn't matter if the clock's at 0, you get a beat after 0. Now, what is a beat? No one can define what a beat is to anybody. So it's arbitrary, right? So in other words, we call it when we flip and feel like we're going to call it. That's it, and we're getting there with false starts. I've heard people this week, and nobody official, but I've heard people say the NFL's not calling it anymore if the foot you're moving is still in the air when the ball is snapped. So in other words, they're letting tackles sort of take that half back step as long as they're not set again when the ball's snapped. Now, okay, well, did someone let anyone but the Eagles know that? Because the Eagles clearly know it. The rest of the league doesn't seem to know it. So yeah, that's good stuff. And it's
really good.
You think about this. The NFL is the Jet game was so exposing to what the NFL is doing because of those two plays. Because you look at the two plays and you realize this. The NFL is very familiar and very comfortable with the concept of keeping the flag in your pocket at certain times during the game. Hence, not calling the holding on the Jet defender.
Yep.
So you don't call that hold because, come on, what are we going to do? Back them up another 10? It's already 3rd and 20. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
But yet on the same drive, on the same play, they throw a bailout flag on the offense. So if keeping that flag in your pocket applies to the offensive lineman holding, shouldn't it also apply to the defensive lineman or the defensive back doing virtually nothing to a receiver? No, it's like in the same play on the same drive, they contradict themselves. I've said on this podcast since the beginning, 3rd and 20, whether it's in the first quarter or the fourth quarter, that is NF or NHL overtime. There is no flag on 3rd and 20. There cannot be a flag on 3rd and 20. I even agree with saying I'm not calling anyone on offense for holding on 3rd and 20. I'm fine with that. 3rd and 20, you should have to murder somebody for that flag to come out. 3rd and 20 or more. But it's not what the NFL wants. And when they say things like you call everything the same, you don't, because you let the holding go. You call things right now to favor the offense, period.
Hey, guys, remember the days when if you had a personal foul as an offensive player, it was 1st and 25. Now it's still 1st and 10. You're 15 yards back, but there's no penalty for 1st and 25. They don't want to put the offense in that hole to start off with.
Exactly.
Yeah. You remember back in the day, you guys, I think you remember this in Nick games when Jordan would get a tech. And then he'd be like, well, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen because they're never giving him a second. He can do any flipping thing he wants to do
Absolutely.
right now.
I don't remember him getting texts that often, but yeah.
No, he didn't. I mean, but when they did tee him up, you're like, oh my God. Oh,
or if he got to the 5th foul, same thing.
Yeah. He could do anything he wanted. The NFL's kind of starting to feel like that now because they come out, they make a big deal. This is number 7's first offense. You're never giving him a second. They don't even bother.
By the way, Gino didn't get a taunting penalty for going into the Giants huddle during a timeout, but yet he gets it for barking at the sideline a little bit later.
I don't understand the application of that. I mean, I'm beginning to think, to Cardone's point earlier about Daniel Jones being a soft target, I'm beginning to think the Giants themselves are a soft target. How do we not get a call for getting punched in the face? How do we get offsetting penalties for doing nothing but getting punched in the face? How does Geno Smith get away with coming into our huddle, grabbing guys and screaming at them?
Screaming at them.
I mean, how do you not? I mean, that is the most obvious interpretation of these rules.
Well, but a guy that beats his chest after making a play is called for taunting.
Yeah. Or a guy, turning halfway around to look at who's following him during a long touchdown run.
So we did have a few questions. So my buddy Mike Harrison asked several. I think we talked about a lot of these. At least we talked about replacing the offensive line coach. He had mentioned that. So I'm just going to stick with Cardone's answer of, fire the fucking guy.
Heads will get a roll.
Do something. Someone has to be accountable. Yes.
But he asks one that is an homage almost to Novak and Sam Darnold. But he asked if Daniel Jones is seeing ghosts and would any of us consider benching him? I personally think Daniel Jones is one tough son of a bitch. He's probably going to end up leaving this season early because he's going to take a hit one of these days that he doesn't get up from. He was very close in that last game from having that happen. You could see he's frustrated. I want Daniel Jones out there. I want him to be the guy, because we saw what happened when he left last time. We had Mike Glennon as a backup, and we didn't win not only did we not win a game, we weren't competitive. I don't see us being competitive with Tyrod Taylor, and people that are looking for Tyrod Taylor. And I know Mike's not looking for Tyrod Taylor here. He's just saying, would you bench Daniel for a game, just let him get his wits about him, get back into the flow. I see his point here, and the Miami game actually is not a bad time to do that. But I just don't think as an organization you do that to your starting quarterback unless you want to open up quarterback controversy.
No. People would never agree with this statement I'm about to make, but Daniel Jones is the least of the Giants' problems right now. The least. Benching Jones. No, my emphatic answer would be absolutely not. What does it matter? The line's the same. Who does it? It doesn't. You could put fucking Patrick Mahomes behind that line. I would love to have a hypothetical sports world. Can you imagine, guys, a hypothetical sports world where you can just pick and plug, literally like simulate a game action and put someone behind that line. We saw Patrick Mahomes get chewed up by Tampa Bay in Super Bowl, whatever that was a couple years ago, right? He looked pretty human and pretty pedestrian, didn't he?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So it's when you're under that much pressure and duress that Jones is under, it doesn't matter who's back there. It's not the quarterback right now. Jones, I will say this, maybe on the pick six, there's definitely what I did notice, and this is going to sound maybe a little far-fetched, but his body language and a couple times when the camera caught his face coming off the field, it looked different than even in the first three games. He looked like this is holy shit. Like he definitely is now not seeing ghosts, but he knows that he is in dire straits right now. And so he's forced to make throws he doesn't want to make. He has nowhere to go with the ball. He's going to now, the turnovers are going to continue just simply because what other choice does he have? Hold the ball and get sacked? He has nowhere to go. This offensive line, anyone who's listening, if you're not watching, watch an entire New York Giant football game and you tell me where you've seen a worse offensive line than this product right now in your entire life of watching this league.
Saying that he sees ghosts sort of implies that he's responding to pressure that's not there. The pressure is there. They are not ghosts. Yeah. They are monsters.
Excellent, Mike. That's right.
It's not, you have quarterbacks who's the guy who said I'm seeing ghosts out there?
Sam Darnold.
Was that Darnold? Oh, that's why you went there. I get it. Yeah. That implies that you're feeling pressure and stuff that's not there. That is not, to me, what's happening to Daniel Jones. And I understand Mike's point, but especially in New York, I think if the coaches, even if they come out and said this is for Daniel's own good, we don't think we can protect him right now, and he's our guy, so we're going to set him down for a couple of weeks until we can get some help and get this thing figured out. That is like throwing chum into the shark tank. You would never recover from that. The fan base, the New York media would go bananas. So, would I consider benching Daniel Jones? I mean, I think if I'm the coach of the Giants right now and I truly care about Daniel Jones, it crosses my mind to say maybe Daniel Jones can pull a hamstring for a couple weeks here so I don't get the poor kid killed. Now that's of course implying that I'm willing to put Tyrod Taylor up there and let him get his ass kicked for however long. But no, I think the Giants they got to play this hand they're dealt. And, I have 100% confidence in Dable, and I have 100% confidence in Shane, and I have 100% confidence in Daniel Jones, frankly. But this is on the Giants organization I said it at the beginning of the year. I said the one thing is we're putting a lot of faith in that Evan Neal is going to turn the corner, and he didn't. And not only did that hurt a little bit, but now when Neal's out there and he sucks, and we've documented Schmitz and Thomas out, shame on the Giants organization for letting this happen.
And Mike, you had a good text during the game. You said we're watching the same game for the last 6 years.
Yeah,
that basically feels what's happening right now. We're seeing the same exact thing, and it all stems from the offensive line. One last thing I'll say about
before you go, let me just put a point on that, Scott. I'm sorry, but I think this is important to say. Like, how far are we right now from Brian Dable calling back-to-back quarterback sneaks because of the offensive line to get us off the? How far away are we from that? You're starting to see when I defend Joe Judge. If you can't do anything, if you're just you're going to call a pass play and your quarterback's going to get sacked, what else do you do?
Yeah. It crossed my mind when they were down there at the goal line. I'm like, they might do a QB sneak here just to get a couple yards.
Yeah, I think that was written into Dable's contract. You cannot do that, dude.
Now, the one thing in this discussion sort of pulls me back to a point I was going to make earlier and I didn't. And it's when evaluating Jones, the other thing that bothers me is people look at Jones and they look at NFL as if they're playing Madden. Every play is its own play, whereas Daniel Jones is getting blasted play after play. He's getting pressured 36 times in a game, and then you cherry pick a play and go, well, look, this guy's wide open 10 yards downfield. Well, Daniel Jones for the last 10 plays has just seen 3 guys coming into his face after the snap. Do you really expect him to find the guy that's open in that split second that he has time on that next play? Or do you expect him to take off and run because he's going to get his ass killed if he doesn't? And are there times he's missed receivers? Sure. Did he play a good game? No. But the people that expect perfection from a quarterback and go back from a tape and retroactively say he did poorly on a certain play without taking that context in is something that we get into far too often with the analysts that are out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can't.
It's people that know better too, like the Orlovskis.
It is people who know better. That's what drives me nuts about it. To hear RG3, who by the way, why are we taking advice on quarterbacks and listening to the analysis of quarterbacks from these fucking losers who could not hack it in the NFL? I mean, why is there, because they sat in a locker room? Dude, they sucked. Why isn't Joe Montana on TV telling me something about quarterback? I'd listen to that. Dan Orlovsky, give me a break. Who's this guy?
And Troy Aikman did make a couple of good comments during that game. He's like, well, could Daniel Jones throw this ball anticipating his receiver getting open? He probably could do a better job at that, but he's like, is his receiver going to get open? There's times his receiver's not getting open. And he basically, I thought he commiserated with what Jones was going through. He mentioned himself getting sacked 11 times.
How many times did he say Daniel Jones has no chance right now? He must have said that 6 times during the game.
He did.
And if I hear another analyst say the term throwing a wide receiver open, like you just throw the ball and the wide receiver goes to get it. No, there's a play designed. And if your receiver has not cleared the linebacker, you throw that ball. And if your receiver doesn't clear it, it gets picked. And then who's blamed? They're not going, well, he tried to throw his wide receiver open, but that's a pick.
Not to mention, I mean, they always do this. This is one of my least favorite things they do. So they did this a ton this week. They take a play and they freeze frame it and they go right here. If Jones fires that ball right here, or you're looking at film and you're advancing it 1 millisecond at a time. Right. I mean, the human brain doesn't work like that, you asshat. It just, it doesn't. And you see Jones and he's got the ball. He's taking 2 steps back. The ball's in his chest and his eyes are looking downfield and they say right here, like he's just supposed to push it off his chest and, and shoot it out to the guy. It just doesn't work that way. If Daniel Jones stood tall in the pocket long enough to hit these guys that these analysts are saying are open, he would already be out for the year. He would have more fumbles, that is 24 career fumbles, and he'd be out for the year right now if he stood in there to throw it right here at the next guy. It's off the charts stupid, and I'm really getting sick of listening to it.
If we had a choice, would we sweep Philly or beat Dallas in our last game? If those are the only wins we have, if we only have 2 more wins left on the schedule.
Sweep Philly, no question.
I would sweep Philly too.
Sweep Philly. Yeah.
I saw this week, Novak, I don't know if you know this. The only team in the NFL the Jets have not beaten is the
Philly.
Philadelphia Eagles.
That's correct.
I did
Ever?
not.
Ever.
Yep.
How is that possible?
How
Never
many,
beaten
how
the
many,
Philadelphia
coat
Eagles.
ever?
Well, I mean,
How many
shouldn't it be like the
games?
Texans or the Jaguars or something who've
Yeah.
only been around since the 90s?
Yeah.
No, never beaten the Eagles.
So
And
so
probably will continue that.
Brian Peacock has a question for Novak. So
my
what are
God.
the chances Zach Wilson is bagging his groceries at Wegmans next year?
That's actually a really good question. Last week I would have said a very good chance. But he comes from a lot of money, so I don't know that he's gonna be bagging groceries anytime soon. But he did play better this week. I still think he sucks. I'm not gonna be one of these guys that flips because of one game. He's gonna need to show 4 or 5 games and stack them before I think he's worth anything.
Peacock, you need to be more specific because Justin Fields, which Wegmans? Fields were you bagging them at the one down the street? So, or maybe one of them can, or you got a couple registers there. Maybe they can just work as a team. Different registers.
Although Jack Wilson might do that. He can find a lot of moms there, so that would probably be good for him.
That's a good.
Well,
soccer
he
mom
might be working side by side with Trey Lance.
Yeah, you can tell this is how bad things are, guys. Peacock, listen, I've known him my whole life. He is not one to stop kicking you when you're down, and that he didn't even take a shot at the Giants this week. That's humiliating.
He did.
Right. Okay.
For brevity, we're at an hour and a half now at the pod.
Yeah,
So for brevity's sake, I didn't throw out the question where he asked if Dion is hired as the Giants coach. You turning in your fan card.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's good. I've never known Brian to let up on the shit talk.
And he had a question about Dable souring on Jones, but we covered that earlier. So I think we've run the course of the shitty week, and I'm going to be in Germany the next 2 weeks, which means I'm going to be up at 3 a.m. doing the podcast with you fuckers. Whoa. Probably for 2 losses of games in which we're still going to be hashing the same old shit.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't want to just play this one on the next 2 weeks? I guess we got to get the Jets talk might change a the Giants talk won't.
I could do the Cincinnati Bengals
I was about
preseason.
To say, you could replay that.
Yeah, that's about what we're worth. By the way, just for the record, going back to 1973, the Jets are 0-12 against the Philadelphia Eagles.
My goodness,
Jesus,
pathetic.
So Philadelphia just dominates New York teams, don't they?
Oh yeah.
There's not a team I can't stand more that's not in the AFC than the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're gonna lose to them again.
We need to get statues of fictional characters in our city.
Yeah, I mean that's what you do when your heroes are fake.
We need to have like Superman in there. It's Gotham.
I mean, Superman would be a good. Yeah. I mean, what's if it's that easy to get a statue in Philadelphia? I mean, does Jalen Hurts already have one? I mean, at least he's a real. It's you can justify that more than. I don't know whether to call the statue a statue of Sylvester Stallone or a statue of Rocky Balboa. I don't know what it is.
Right. All right. He's not a real person. Rocky Balboa is right. It's not a real
be
person.
Rocky.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they must have like how Green Bay like named streets Holmgren Boulevard and all that. Is there a Peterson Avenue there by the stadium?
Reed Way.
Yeah. You don't have to do the threshold for statues is low if you want a statue.
You guys got anything else this week?
I'm spent.
Hit us up at angry_3 on Twitter. We are the 3 Angry Giant fans and a Jet fan. This is your host, Scott, Giant Mike, Cardone, and Novak. And same time next week, we're probably going to be singing the same stuff because I'm sure Taylor Swift's going to still be in full motion and the Giants are still going to suck. Jets have a chance against the Broncos. So adios, people.
See you.
Have a good one.
Is this thing still on?